And we are back to discuss more Fire and Blood. This time we'll be tackling the Dying of the Dragons, A Son for a Son, which is the second chapter in the Dance of Dragons storyline in Fire and Blood. Preston, we're here. We've made it past the first chapter to probably the shortest chapter in the entire book.
Right, right. But before we start on this, I have to get back into like one issue that a lot of people in the comments were having was my claim that Kristen Cole might be the father of Jace. And you got a lot of people like, no, that's impossible. It's totally Harwin Strong. And I have to address one other thing that I didn't mention last time on why. So, in case, just timeline wise, Jace is born in late 114 and Rhaenyra and Laenor are married in early 114. So, the 9 months, it all works out, but everything happens in 114. And so the idea is that whoever is banging Rhaenyra has to bang her around the time of her marriage, because there's just not that much time. Jace is born, as they say, in the waning days of the year, which, means, the last couple months probably, which means, it's around, if she's married in 114, it's around the time of her wedding is when she's banged. Mm-hmm. Now, the whole thing is that, people are like, oh, when was Kristen Cole's opportunity? Well, Kristen Cole went to the wedding, but this is a very, very important thing. And there's just one throwaway line in the text, but Harwin Strong gets his collarbone and elbow broken by Kristen Cole in the tourney at the wedding. There's a tourney leading up to the wedding. And so, you have to say like, okay, with a broken collarbone and a broken elbow, yeah, you're not going to be up for sex. And this is a big thing, like that everyone's assuming that Harwin Strong is the father, but he is injured. Like it takes many, many weeks to get over a broken collarbone and a broken elbow. You're not going to be, and plus the text also says that, Harwin Strong got really close to Rhaenyra because he was her personal protector, after the wedding. And you're like, how is he the personal protector when he can't freaking lift a sword? Like nothing about the story makes sense. So it was why I say that like Harwin Strong, probably not the father of Jace. Now, which immediately makes me think Kristen Cole. Now, of course, it could just be somebody else, and we've who's just not mentioned in the text. Which probably, maybe it's somebody else, but it's definitely not Harwin Strong.
To the people who dispute Preston, this is your amazing opportunity to be a YouTuber. Get a video editing thing, get a good microphone, dispute Preston if you don't believe him, make a video, send it to me, let me watch it, I'll send it to Preston, we'll see. This could be the beginning of a brand new YouTube channel right here, because I read your comments as well, and people were against you on this. So.
Right. I couldn't believe it, because when I read it, it's like, come on, it's just a little too obvious. Like he paints it a little too obviously that it would be Harwin Strong. And so once you start reading between the lines, you're like, oh gosh, or looking for the careful stuff. You're like, no, actually it can't be Harwin Strong. He was freaking injured. So he's not banging anybody. All right, now let's get on with our next chapter.
Yes. So once again, as always, we're on SoundCloud, iTunes, all that good stuff. So check us out there, and of course, leave your comments down below. Especially leave your comments down below if you disagree with Preston. But we start the chapter.
We read every single comment.
Of course.
Yeah.
We start the chapter with Rhaenyra's group making moves all over, while she sends her lover and sons to various locations to recruit allies.
Oh, by the way, right in the beginning, I love it how they say all efforts at reconciliation have failed. Like what efforts besides Maester Orwell's like pathetic attempt. There's no efforts. Anyway,
It was a
continue.
decent attempt based off what he had to do, and
Yeah,
everybody has
whatever.
dragons, so he's put in a weird situation.
Much did a much worse job than
Cleo's Frey.
Cleo's Frey. Cleo's Frey, much better. Okay, continue.
So, Caleris Valerion moves to stop trade to and from King's Landing, cutting off some of their wealth. But over in Harrenhal, Daemon Targaryen, the rogue prince, seizes the castle, its wealth, and valuable hostages, including a wet nurse named Alice Rivers, who Septon Eustace says was a woods witch, and almost an entire page is devoted to this person who supposedly dabbled in poison and spells, and she kind of sounds a lot like the Diet Coke version of Melisandre. More on her in a later chapter.
Absolutely. I mean, she's supposed to sound like Melisandre, or specifically Danelle Lodston, who is of Harrenhal, but Danelle Lodston is also just a Melisandre ripoff character. She also has elements of Went infertility. So there's a lot of so the houses the houses that had Harrenhal before
Are like cursed.
yeah. So the Went family, which is actually Catelyn's matrilineal family, are known for being rather infertile, and so and which is why they die out. And then the Lostons, have their own little curse before that. But going back, it's just everybody that has a Harrenhal doesn't do too well. But yeah, she's got a whole bunch of those little elements in there. Of Danelle Lodston and such, yeah.
But with Harrenhal taken, it gives Rhaenyra's faction a stronghold within the heart of Westeros and a place for their allies in the upper region to gather. Several notable river lords come to join the Blacks, including the Freys, the Blackwoods, the Mallisters. Lord Grover of House Tully tried to stay true to his word to support the male heir, which is a callback to the Council of 101, and as such, he wanted to side with King Aegon now, but his grandson, Elmo Tully, decided to stay out of it for the time being, fearing Dragonfire would kill them from whichever side they took.
Yeah. Now all of this, like, obviously we got the Muppet stuff that George thought was hilarious to name them, Kermit and Elmo. But we have a near bloodless fall of Harrenhal because what Daemon flies in with his dragons and they essentially surrender. But it's so bloodless that you do kind of have to wonder if the Strongs were really for the Blacks. Like, they surrender just so easily. And so there's that question of whose side are the Strongs on? Or whose side are the Strongs on? Or maybe they're just seeing. Maybe they're just, are they secret Black supporters? Or are they just, whichever way the wind blows? But yeah. But it's pretty amazing that River Run and the Riverlands and everything are just taken so quickly all at once. It all kind of reminds me of season 8 a bit, right? Or not season 8, season 7. With like Dany doesn't attack King's Landing, but instead blockades it and then goes in and takes the land around King's Landing first. I don't know.
I don't remember her doing much strategy in season 7. I just remember her losing a good chunk of her supporters at sea to Euron fucking Greyjoy. The fucking Vale and Riverlands, I don't remember them being mentioned at all in season 7, which is weird. But
I mean, I guess maybe they were in the Reach. Don't you remember they had that big Dothraki battle against the Lannisters in the middle of the
right, the Lannisters and the Reach controlled houses. But I didn't see any Tullys or Aarons anywhere in that season. So
no. They were mysteriously gone. Yeah.
The Stormlords, don't even fucking bring them up because they don't exist to D&D. But speaking of the Aarons, in the Vale, Jace would treat with Jane Arryn, who decided to align herself with Rhaenyra, but requested that the Vale be guarded from a potential dragon attack from the Greens. They could fend off armies of men, but were vulnerable from above, so she asked for dragon riders to help in such an event, which Jace agrees. He then departs for White Harbor, where Lord Manderley still remembers that he's due a Targaryen bride. In a previous chapter, one of Jaehaerys' daughter was supposed to marry him, or one of his family members, but she died during a race in the streets of King's Landing. And one of Jace's brothers, Joffrey, would marry Lord Manderley's youngest daughter once the war is over, securing House Manderley.
So Jace is also a much better negotiator than Maester Orwell.
You and this
Man,
Maester Orwell, I swear.
oh man, Maester Orwell. Ugh. I mean, it's his job. I'm just saying, like that's what Maesters are supposed to do. But
Yeah,
okay.
to deliver terms.
Well, I mean, they're supposed to be, they've got this whole, I mean, granted, they're many hat jobs. Like you're not only advisor and negotiator, but you're also like the doctor, which is,
The
and the,
teacher.
and the teacher for the kids. Like it's a lot. But so I could imagine that because they don't just have one job. I can't be like Maester Orwell. You had one job. I can't really be like that because Maesters actually have an unrealistic amount of things on their shoulders. So, okay, maybe he focused a lot on his medical studies.
Jace next stops in Winterfell to treat with Cregan Stark. By the way, it's Cregan, right? I'm saying that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's fine. Cregan,
And
that's what I say.
this is where and this part right here is where I smell like a bunch of theories just coming forward from everybody, including yourself. Because we have a lot of stories here of what happened. One story tells us that Cregan and Jace hit it off very well, like brothers almost, hunting and drinking together. Another story tells us that Jace pissed off Cregan by fooling around with his bastard sister, Sarah. And of course, we have Mushroom coming in and telling us that Jace's dragon, Vermax, laid a clutch of dragon eggs while in Winterfell, though this is highly disputed by the author, going as far as to claim that dragons can change gender is just too ridiculous to even consider, and that it's almost impossible to tell which gender they are. Which aren't they? What's the technical term for that? They're hermaphrodites, technically, right?
Yeah, or something. There's a whiff of that somewhere in. I think it's when Maester Aemon is like finds out that Daenerys is alive and has dragons. He's like, oh right, because dragons can switch genders. He says it differently, but he's like, but I think he says it in a more poetic way. But it's something like that. Yeah, that. So, I mean, who knows if Jace's dragon really did leave a clutch or not? I mean, Jace's dragon is kind of young, but we don't know how old dragons have to be to lay eggs. So maybe, I don't know. So it's tough to say. But yeah, that reason that the sex of the dragon is the problem isn't the problem. If the problem either maybe the dragon laid it or maybe it didn't, but not because of the sex of the dragon. But obviously, we're supposed to think of like Rhaegar and Lyanna and Bale the Bard and all of that because
right.
Yeah.
Well, and to be fair, you would think that dragons, in order to lay any eggs, would have to be like in a comfortable environment, and we're told several times that dragons really are not comfortable up north in the cold.
Right. Right.
So that is kind of like I love Mushroom's takes, but this is kind of silly.
Because isn't there a similar story that Good Queen Alysanne's dragon might have laid some eggs at the wall, and you're like, come on, probably not.
That's ridiculous, but you never know. That could be a thing. But what we do know is that Cregan and Jace reach an accord known as the Pact of Ice and Fire, which needed to be sealed with a marriage. Jace had no children, but it was assumed that he would have children of his own once his mother sat on the Iron Throne. So, under the terms of the pact, the prince's firstborn daughter would be sent to the north at the age of 7 to be fostered at Winterfell until such a time as she was old enough to marry Lord Cregan's heir. So, Jace had now won the allegiance of 3 powerful houses, 2 of which held the highest titles of their region. But the problem starts here where over in the Stormlands, we have like a whole thing all together. And I have to say, I really did like how this section was written between like Aemon and Borros Baratheon.
Oh yeah, no, this is a big deal. There's a lot. See, I have more, even though there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in Winterfell that one could think about. I think it's more significant what's going on in the Stormlands. Like what happens here. With the Maester and everything. But yeah, but continue on about the Stormlands.
You can really feel the character, and
yeah.
that's definitely that Baratheon. Like I just really liked it. I'm a huge Baratheon fanboy, so
I know this is why you're so sad that they just kind of disappeared in the.
That was ridiculous. To be fair, I wanted to see most of Westeros because I love that type of stuff, but yeah. But during these negotiations, Lucerys, also known as Luke, would come flying over to Storm's End to try and win over the Stormlands to Rhaenyra, but he was greeted with Vhagar's terrifying roar. And inside Storm's End, Aemon taunted Luke while the boy tried to give his message to Boros Baratheon, who rejected Rhaenyra. As Luke tried to retreat back to Dragonstone, he was chased down by Aemon and killed over the seas of the Stormlands. So, yeah, this is First Blood.
Right, but this is a very interesting situation here because
you said there were maesters involved in all that.
Well, yes, Boros Baratheon is illiterate.
And right, he gave the letter to his maester who whispered it into his ears. Right, oh, Jesus, Preston.
Yes,
this is where now I see it.
Okay, so this is the big thing is that what the maester actually whispered was not necessarily the terms, or he might have put things in a more rude fashion or in a more insulting way or a direct way, and so this is why I say, oh, well, I mean, like, it's very specifically mentioned that Boros is illiterate and that the maester whispers that, and it's like, well, what other point to the story would there be, that, like, why would we even, like, know, like, why would we care if Boros is illiterate unless it's significant in some way? So you kind of have to say, well, what did the maester really say, or what, did it make the relations all fall apart?
See, I don't think this maester is behind the whole, like, conspiracy thing, like you're putting that, but I can't argue against it because that is, like, the dude is illiterate. Come on, Jesus Christ, and it's hard to convince you out of that one because you have points.
Right. I mean, you could argue that maybe it was unintentional and it was an accident, But the point is that it's got to be relevant, right? Or else George wouldn't have put that little piece in.
I guess
he wants us to think about it. Now, with regard to Aemon and Luke, this is an interesting thing because so Aemon flies Vhagar, and in A Dance with Dragons. This is a little aside thing, but in A Dance with Dragons, Tyrion gets into an argument with Haldon Halfmaester about what dragon this one knight from House Swan tried to attack. And the scene has Tyrion saying, no, it was not Vhagar, it was Syrax. And you're supposed to read it and think, oh, Tyrion's so smart. Like, he can out-maester a maester by like, deconstructing history and being like, all the Maester Munkin errors, because, like, why would a swan who fights for the Stormlands be attacking Vhagar when the Baratheons supported the Greens? Which is a very, very simplistic way of looking at things, because in truth, the Stormlanders never joined the war until the very end. Which is like the very, very end of the war did they come in. And by then, Syrax is dead. So, and keep in mind at this point, for most of the war, like, Rhaenyra and Syrax are injured and are not flying anywhere. And then Rhaenyra brings Syrax to King's Landing, and there's a riot in King's Landing, but no one attacks Syrax, and so, like, how this knight, why Tyrion thinks a random knight from House Swan would be attacking Syrax is also just kind of baffling. And so I do wonder if somehow, because Vhagar is here in the Stormlands, I wonder if somehow somebody from House Swan tried to attack Vhagar at some point to somehow make Maester Munkin correct that Vhagar is getting attacked. But
well, in the chapter we are briefly, there's an attention on a member of House Swan, which, as we're told, will be important later on. So that person was there.
Yeah. So it may be that that it's funny because there's this whole scene about how, oh, I'm Tyrion and I'm smarter than a maester, and then it's like, no, actually Tyrion's fucking wrong, and Maester Munkin was correct the whole time. It was Vhagar, But you would have never caught that. I mean, it's so incredibly subtle.
Niche.
Yeah, like that you'd have this scene that you think is Tyrion being super smart, but it's actually Tyrion being arrogant. That he doesn't know everything. He thinks he's smarter than a maester, and he's not smarter than a maester, because Maester Monken is actually correct that it was Vhagar. It was not Syrax. It doesn't make any sense to be Syrax, but
Add that to the checklist of things that George had to put in here, you know?
I know, but I mean, other people have said, like, looked at it, like, I've had this conversation with others about this particular issue, because I wrote an essay a few years ago about this issue. And some people are like, okay, what you're saying makes sense, but maybe when George wrote A Dance with Dragons, he hadn't hammered out all of the details of the actual Dance of the Dragons. And so when he actually did, he ended up contradicting himself. And I was like, maybe, but, I don't know. Then he'd be like retroactively changing the intention of his own chapter, which could be, that's like him. So I don't know. It's very, very niche and very obscure. I think, like how many people are going to catch that? Pretty much just me.
I'm sure other people caught it too. I'm sure there'll be that one guy in the comment section. There's always that one guy.
Yeah. No, I was totally with you. It was Vhagar, not Syrax.
Aemon came back to King's Landing expecting a hero's welcome, but he didn't really receive that. Alicent was not happy about this, but his brother Aegon II was thrilled that they made the first move against the Blacks. Daemon, however, moved swiftly for revenge. Being somewhat of a scoundrel, he knew all the shifty people in King's Landing that could strike back at the Greens. Two cutthroats, Blood and Cheese, were hired to sneak into the Red Keep and carry out an act of vengeance on Aegon's children.
Yeah,
a son for a son.
First on the Aemon thing, like clearly they're trying to do parallels with Aemon and Bloodraven. Like they both miss an eye and they're both kinslayers. Like everyone's angry at Aemon for being a kinslayer, but and being so bold and ruthless. Which is exactly like Bloodraven, who's also missing an eye, who's very bold and ruthless against his kin, his half brother. But anyway, continue on. Blood and Cheese.
So Blood and Cheese succeed in slaying one of the king's children before fleeing, and I know some people are going to wonder why I'm leaving out the details of this chapter at the end, because it's kind of insane, and I don't know if this will get your channel in trouble. So
oh yeah, it's really like. You're saying if you actually describe the events, like it's going to be like too disturbing, it's pretty bad, but it's essentially Blood and Cheese come in and force a Sophie's choice, right? And then she makes a choice, and then they do the opposite, and get her, and it's disastrous, and everyone gets depressed and she ends up killing herself over the whole incident. Yes.
So for those of you wondering what page this is on in Fire and Blood, it's 426, page 426. Yep, that's what Preston said is basically how it ends. The chapter ends with on a somber mood, as both the Greens and the Blacks are left with devastating losses. A couple of notes about the chapter. Mushroom says that Alice River likes to bathe in the blood of virgins to keep her youth, which is a reference to the Hungarian noblewoman Elizabeth Bathory, who supposedly bathed in the blood of over 500 young women.
Oh. And Danelle Loveston supposedly did that too. But yeah, that's the real life history thing?
Yes. And in tradition with repeating story beats from the main series of books, we have an elderly Lord Tully on his deathbed and an unmarried female ruler of the Vale. Hoster Tully and Lysa Arryn. And then Lord Tully and his family, as you mentioned before, are named Grover, Elmo, and Kermit, which is a cute reference to the Muppets, and of course, Alice River being the Diet Coke Melisandre.
Do we want to talk about Blood and Cheese? Do you think that Cheese is Larry Strong?
Where would you get that? How would you get? No, I wouldn't think that at all. But why would you think that?
Well, the idea that Varys knows the in and out. So Blood and Cheese are supposed to be Cheese, at least, is supposed to be the rat catcher
Hmm.
of the Red Keep, which is why he knows all of the secret passages, right? Um, but Varys, of course, also knows all of the secret passages, and before he had his little birds, he had his mice. That's what Illyrio called the little birds before. So there's already this idea that Larys is a master of mice, and this guy's a rat catcher who knows all of the tunnels. And
Hmm.
so Lary's strong.
Isn't he
Larys,
Master of Whispers?
he's the master of whispers, just as Varys is. His name is Larys. It rhymes with Varys. And so the idea is that he is cheese. Because they never catch cheese in the end. They catch blood. They catch blood and they execute him. And I think Larys is the one that actually tortures and kills him, which is like hilarious, right? That he would catch his partner and then torture and kill him, and then claim that I couldn't get any information out of him when he's actually cheese. That's my theory about the whole thing.
So you're basing this off the fact that the names rhyme, which okay,
And they have the
we've seen
same
that
and they have
before
the
in
same
this.
and they have the same position. The names rhyme and they have the same position. And Larys is supposedly the secret black supporter, and
Well,
the mice and the cheese thing.
Damon did say how he still had some allies left in the city, even up in the councils of the Green. So yeah, perhaps. But were they even wearing masks when they carried this out? Why wouldn't Alicent like recognize him?
Uh, because he's able to disguise himself the same way Varys does. They put on like mummer makeup and stuff.
Okay, sure, but so he does what he does what Christian Bale's Batman does, where he disguises his voice
Yeah,
like this. Like,
yeah,
yeah, okay.
absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I think there's a time where like Larys disguises King Aegon as a commoner and sends him out. So he's totally into that. I I mean, yeah, yeah, no, he's totally. I mean, Varys changes his stuff, and also Varys moonlit as a Black Cells guard, remember? So the
That's
idea
right.
that Larys would be moonlighting as the rat catcher is also like would be a parallel kind of situation.
That's a random theory, and it's so thin, but fucking
Well,
hilarious at the same time that he tortures blood.
oh yeah, this is
Jesus Christ.
well. First of all, when they because his name is Larys, I'm always thinking of Varys, right? And he's
Hmm.
the master of whispers. So when they talked about somebody that knew the ins and outs of the all the holes and the secret passages of the Red Keep, I immediately thought, oh, Varys, Larys. So it must be. So I immediately thought that cheese, like in my first read, I thought that cheese was Larys Strong. Um, and then kind of like piecing it together and being like, wait a minute, he tortures his own, like he catches and tortures his own partner. That's fucking fucked up. Like, well, I mean, the entire situation with blood and cheese is really fucked up. So
Of course.
really, it's just kind of fitting, I guess.
And the person who hired them, that was Damon's mistress, his original mistress, that was
Yeah,
sent back to lease.
yeah. The
Right.
white worm. Yeah.
And eventually becomes the mistress of whispers under Rhaenyra.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, you might have something there.
I mean,
But
who knows? I mean, that's the thing is like, are we ever going to know? Like, there's never more that's going to be written about this situation, and George is never going to extrapolate. So like, this is all we have.
who knows? Once the spinoff comes off, they might give a nice nod to that. But the chapter, very short, which I appreciate. Very interesting. As per usual, a lot of this like back and forth is them setting it up and them planning and plotting and making promises and pacts and secret allegiances. I love stuff like that. I always have. That's what really gets me into the whole series. I would say this chapter, the ending of this chapter, ranks up there top 5, if not top 10, of most fucked up things in all of us of Ice and Fire. But for me, what takes the cake usually is the wedding night between Ramsay and um, fuck, tip of my tongue.
Jane Poole.
Jane Poole.
Yeah.
How that chapter ends with him trying to get Theon in on the action at the
Yeah.
wedding night.
Yeah.
That ranks as like top up there as to this I would say is in the top 5 with that. But overall, pretty good chapter. What did you think?
Yeah, no, definitely. Now that we're in the thick of it, this is, stuff George wrote when he was, young and ambitious and had a lot of passion, and it shows, like this is good stuff, and it's good that they broke it up a little so that we can take it in slowly. Because I think one mistake I think a lot of people do when they tackle Princess and the Queen and Fire and Blood is that you try to read it all at once, and it's overwhelming. And so like taking it piece by piece is the kind of the way to go.
Do you think they'll put a lot of the stuff in the spinoff?
Yes. If the
Really?
spinoff makes it this far, because this is going to be like season 3 or 4, right? Like
Nah, no way. Because the spinoff is going to take place, like just as King Viserys is like, in power. Because I thought originally Dance of like the whole House of the Dragon thing was going to take place at the very beginning when Aegon is like conquering the Seven Kingdoms. But no, this is going to be Dance of Dragons stuff. So I'm expecting this to be like season 1.
I mean, if it's season 1, then that would be really fast, and the entire show would be like 2 seasons. But maybe.
I mean, it being a limited series is not a bad thing.
I mean, maybe we'll compromise and we'll say this is season 2 stuff.
Season 2 stuff, you think so?
I mean,
ooh, if we're gonna have 10 episodes, ooh.
and end season 1 with the start of the war, and then this would be like the beginning of season 2. I don't know.
I can see the war beginning towards the very end of season 1. In fact, I can see this being the penultimate episode, the episode 9, the dreaded episode, where like shit gets real and dark and heavy, and things are changed up tremendously. So I can see this going as far as that. But I personally think this is season 1 type stuff right here. Hopefully, House of the Dragon continues on into the Blackfire Rebellion, because that would be kind of cool. I always love anthology series. I'm sure you and the audience are sick of me saying that. But like I said, chapter pretty good. Next chapter though, how many pages is that? So it starts at. I'm always curious.
You're talking 29 pages.
29 pages. That's not bad. What's annoying is that like I always feel like so many pages. How many of this is going to be like random crap that we're not going to really use? And then most of it is actually just pretty solid stuff and always engrosses me. And that's how I feel. Like, George.
And then you talk to me afterwards and you're like, what? How did you get that? Where did that come from?
You do find like Larys Strong being like being cheese?
Being cheese?
Oh,
totally.
my God.
Totally. Like who else? Who else would be cheese?
Random guy?
Laenor Velaryon? Come on.
That'll be a real twist. Only if M. Night Shyamalan was writing this. Preston, do you have any more to say on the chapter?
No, that's about all.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us on this one. It was a short chapter, so fairly short video. We will see you guys next time. Actually, would you want to like have a nice little break and do a next video as like a Q&A thing?
Sure.
We'll put that on your channel as well. Guys, leave the any questions you have for the next video, which will be a nice little break where we pause for a minute and do some Q&As and answer your questions about Fire and Blood or A Song of Ice and Fire in general. But as always, we'll see you next time. Have a good one.